You're listening to the 2017 Nelson Arts Festival Page and Blackmore Readers and Writers Programme. This session features Emily Wrights in conversation with Cindy Batt.
Good everybody. First I want to thank you all for coming here today. Emily and I are quite new to this, so we're going to try and make this as relaxed as possible, mainly for us, but also for yourselves. So I was given a set of rules, basically, or guidelines, and I'm going to break them all. We want you to ask questions, okay? So if you've got a burning desire to ask a question, please don't wait until the end. And that way we have more of a banter with the audience as well. Obviously, the main objective is to get Emily to talk about her book and various questions I'm going to be asking her to open that up. But do feel encouraged to ask questions at any point, okay? And it's the old school days, put your hand up. Just makes it really easier in case somebody else has a question at the same time. So welcome again to Emily, who's flown in here this morning. I'm assuming that everybody out there has read the book, or they follow Emily's blog. Great. Well, you're in for an education. So Emily and I have spoken a little bit on the telephone. We actually both met each other today for the first time. We do have a lot in common. Both of us have two boys, varying in ages. Mine have evolved into aliens, aka teenagers. Emily's still fortunate enough to have hers at a lovely young age. Now, do comment on that as we're going through. So I'm going to kick off with asking Emily a little bit about herself, because most of you haven't met Emily and some of you haven't read her book. So I'm going to open up with just saying, well, basically, Emily, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, kia ora everyone. It's really nice to be here, and it's really nice to actually have people here. I have a recurring nightmare that I will come out at an event and there will be just one person, and I feel like just one person is worse than no people, because then you're like, do I have to still do it while making eye contact with just one person? So and then what if they're right sentimental? Like, I think about this a lot. Like, I'm not a natural public speaker, and I very accidentally came to be a writer, which infuriates established writers, and I'm sorry. When my second baby was about 3 weeks old, I was just losing it, because I thought, like, everyone says the second is easier, and I don't know if it's like this huge conspiracy where everybody's fucking lying, because it's not. It's way harder, and and so everyone I talked to was like, oh yeah, it's just the same but with another child, and it wasn't. It was like I was dying, and my baby one would wake up and I would get it to sleep, and then the other one would wake up, and it was just like that all night. And I was just, how does anybody cope with this? And then you go to coffee group and everybody's like, oh, how are your babies sleeping? And you're, great, mine's great, I'm getting so much sleep. And you're just like, it's just, yeah. And oh, it's so easy. And little Kenwa just, is the perfect sleeper, and, and yeah, I just couldn't. I felt like I was living in this other world, and I was convinced that I wasn't the only parent who was just really struggling. And so I wrote a blog post, because I had the kids were tag teaming it. My firstborn still hadn't slept through the night by the time my second was born, but I thought for no reason that he would before my second came along, because I was like, how could he not? That's totally unfair. If you had to wake up to two children, nobody would do that to a person. And yet, so I was waking up to both of them all night, and I did like a fun little post on Facebook that said, oh, teaming, these little buggers keeping me up all night. And then I got all these comments from like great aunts and like neighbours, friends, other people, and I'm like, how? I'm not even Facebook friends with you. And they were all like, be grateful that you've got children and cherish every moment. And I was like, fuck off. I don't. It's 3 a.m. I don't have to fucking be grateful right now. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you fucking come here and be grateful on my behalf. And I thought, I can't even just say, oh, wow, this is really tiring and really overwhelming, without people being like, oh, excuse me, remember to say how every second is a joy. Every minute, you cherish every fucking minute when you're a parent, or else if you don't, something will happen. So I wrote this post that was incoherent rage. The title was, I am grateful, now fuck off. And I wrote it only for my friends so that I wouldn't like knock out old Auntie Ethel. You know, it was a way for me to process my rage. And I did it on an old blog, a WordPress thing. It was real budget. It had nothing on it except fuck off, I'm grateful. And then this, how old are the children? Oh, you're young enough that you won't pick up the F word. When I do these things, I usually change all the swears I do to whatever city I'm in to manage all the children. But yeah, so I did this blog post and thought a few of my friends, we had all sort of timed, we all had second babies at the same time. We didn't time it, we're not like a cult, but so I thought they'll understand. And then throughout the day, my phone kept going off and I couldn't work out where my phone was because my glorious child had decided to like shove it up something. I don't know where it was. And so it was pinging all day and it was driving me insane. And I finally found it and I just had all these texts and all these alerts and everything. And I was like, what is this about? And it was, oh my gosh, your blog. You've got to see this blog. It's so funny. Because I had done it anonymously and all these people were like, love this crazy bitch. She's just like you. And I was like, crazy or smart. Like, so yeah, and then I looked and it had almost 1 million hits in the first sort of 8 hours of being up there, and I was just like, okay, I'll put my phone back down and ignore that, because I had a 3-week-old baby. I was like, and then I checked my email and I had 15,000 emails. So I had emails from like all over the world and stuff being like, thank you for saying this, I feel like I can't ever complain. And it was just heaps of really sad stories of what I think is true, that when we insist that mothers and fathers can never talk about the difficult stuff, we completely silence them. And then they spend all their time thinking, I'm not a good parent. And that's not right. That's not helpful for anybody. So when I got all of that feedback, I kind of went, oh shit, I guess I'll keep writing if I have anything else to say. And I kept writing and I kept getting feedback, and so I just kept doing it. And I eventually got a Facebook page because everybody was like, you can't do this without a Facebook page. And since then everyone's been like, you can't do this without Instagram or Snapchat. And I'm like, look at me not doing it without any of that shit. But yeah, so I just kept going because people kept reading and hoping that the messages that are coming out from it are things that make life easier for parents, because that's my only aim, is to get my rage out and support parents. 2 birds, 1 stone.
So I hope you'll feel like you know Emily now. Okay.
Oh, I have 2 kids. Did I mention that? I'm a mother. I'm so bad at intros. You will see that I don't really answer questions. I just do very long stories that sometimes don't go anywhere. So enjoy.
One of the questions I had to ask Emily when we were chatting this morning, because I guess when you think about the book and Emily's blog, you assume that it's just females and mums that interact. So one of the questions I threw at her, and I'm going to ask this in front of you folks, because I was actually quite not surprised, I guess, with her response, but I think the way that she puts it is way more eloquent than I could. So Emily, do you have many men that post on your blog?
Oh, I do.
Okay, let's open up that question a little bit more. What is your reaction to men? Or what are some of the common questions, I guess, or challenges that they pose?
Well, I think that I think that men, with parenting, it's difficult for men in that they, I don't know. I was going to try and go into this with a bit more of a sympathetic tone by men, but the emails I've got this morning just make me go, nah. Men, a lot of men, not all men, but a lot of men do not like any spaces on the internet that are by a woman for a woman. So when I did one of my posts, I got a bit drunk because I'd only just stopped breastfeeding and I didn't realise that 2 glasses of wine were going to totally cane me. And I went to the movies to see Tarzan, which is a great movie. And I got home and did a very bad thing of drunkenly writing a review of the Tarzan movie, sitting on my toilet like this with one eye on my cell phone, going, he's so hot, so and then I woke up in the morning and I was like, Emily, and I looked at my phone and all the alerts and I looked at my email and I was like, no, what did you do? And that post had like 1 million hits and went everywhere. It's like the number one thing that comes up when you look up Alexander Skarsgård, which I feel so sorry for him as an actor that I've just done that to him. But the thing was, I wrote that post because it was an exchange that me and my girlfriends have and that most women have around a guy that looks like that, like he looks like a transformer or something. Like, you have those conversations. And from then I got all the men like, you're objectifying women. And my favourite, which were objectifying men, my favourite was, imagine if men did this to women. Imagine a world. Oh, I'm sorry, sweet dear. I could never imagine that. So, and this morning I got the same because I recently set up a group because I was being hassled so much to set up a mummy group. And I was like, no, I would rather eat glass than moderate a group that's like 1 million exhausted mothers screaming at each other constantly, which is what mum groups are. And so I was like, mum Facebook online groups, I should say, because everybody's exhausted and people say things like, I could go to a doctor, but instead I'm going to ask thousands of completely unqualified, exhausted mothers, should I vaccinate? And then the first one's like, yes, and the next one's like, fuck you, no, and then the next one's like, fuck you in there, fucker. And I just sit there like, go to a fucking doctor. This is not hard. So that's why I refused to have a mummy group. But I set up this group as a joke called the Zac Efron Shower Scene Rom-Com Appreciation Club, which is based around one particular shower scene in the romantic comedy The Lucky One, and they make out in the shower. And I'm like, this is the type of media I would like to talk about. And so I set up a group so we can talk about this very important media of shower scenes. Hello, darling. And yeah, this morning I have had emails from men being like, I can't believe you have a group and I tried to join it and you wouldn't let me because I'm a man. And this is oppression. I'm like, oh, really? Get used to it. So I don't know. I love men as much as the next, whatever. But they drive me insane. And it just online, I just find that there's this type of man online that has to argue with everything I say, who don't even have children and will be like, you say you're tired, but are you exhausted? I'm like, what are you talking about? And I don't know, are you breastfeeding properly? Because, I'm like, they're my tits. I know more about my tits than you do. There's no way you know more about breastfeeding than I do when you're a man who doesn't have tits. Like, I lost my mind when one of them came into a vaginal prolapse thread. I was like, if you are not a gynecologist, I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to shit on your doorstep, because it is not okay for you to be lecturing women about their vaginal prolapses when you are not a gynecologist. Gary, you are a plumber. That is not the same thing. So that's really... Does that answer your question?
It does.
I mean, I love men. I married one. I throw him he's, I've got 2 little boys, but they just drive me insane. So, yeah.
Wow. How do you feel now, guys?
I'm so glad you're here. No, I do. Have some really great dad readers, and I love talking to them. And I work really hard on the Spinoff Parents to have stories by fathers. We do things on postnatal depression in men, which is not talked about and needs to be talked about much more, and the suicide rate and how it affects men. I do everything that I can to create those spaces for men, but my space with mothers isn't necessarily the space for men, and they're welcome to come along and be respectful and chat, but they're there by my grace alone, and they need to leave if they pull any shit. So,
Ka pai.
yeah.
Ka pai. I guess another question that most mums here will probably appreciate too is the challenges of going back to work when you've still got 2 little ones. Regardless of how many children you've got, it's challenging no matter what. So, Emily, how did you find, juggling exactly that, returning back to work while still having 2 young boys? And what were some of the unexpected hurdles, I guess, that you came across?
Yeah, I think my first time around, I went back to work after 14 weeks because that was the allocation for the paid parental leave. And I also had this weird sort of, I had this real feminist, because I'm a feminist, this idea that I can do it all and I can, and I really wanted to be the best at my job and nobody's going to question that I'm not committed and, all those things. And I just made myself insane by working too hard, trying to be a parent at home and do everything they wanted at work. And I really burned myself out really quickly, especially because Eddie was a really sick child. So I would be at the hospital all night and then working all day. And that whole thing that I eventually left, that environment, but it taught me a lot about how we don't support women going back into the workplace. A lot of the conversations you hear about women in the workplace are like, oh, she's leaving early, to pick up the kids from school. And it's like no recognition of the fact that she'll be logging on in the evening and spending more time, or the fact that she didn't fuck around in the kitchen talking about Married at First Sight. She's been at her desk working this whole time, and you're trying to constantly prove that you're no different. But as mothers, we are different once we have children, that whether you stay, whether it's just a small difference or not. But for me, it was night and day how much I changed when I became a parent. And I know that's not the same for everybody, but I felt like I had nobody to guide me on how to do that. I needed somebody to say, you don't have to work 80 hours a week to show that you're still good at your job. Or you did, you had a baby, you didn't have a brain aneurysm or something, you're not. And just pushing back on, I had a lot of pressure to stop breastfeeding at work. So I did very early, at about 20 weeks, and I really regret that. But we were told, there's not a room for you, there's not, and so I think even in 2017, people don't realise that actually it's really hard when you go back to work with very young children. I've had a lot easier time the second time around because I basically said I will have a nervous breakdown if I have to go back to a job like that. And then the book, the blog happened, and I started to get offers of paid work for the Herald and Metro magazine and stuff like that. So I was able to supplement my income. But then, like, my husband had an injury and had to stop working. But we really sat down and went, okay, what's the least amount of money that we can live on? And what are the things we can do to try and get around that? And then I had a few really lucky breaks with Flick Electric becoming my sponsor. And that helped me. And then I got the book, which I earn not much on, but those things together with a new job that was 20 hours a week mean I can do kids. I work during kindy hours. I look after the kids after kindy, and then in the evenings I do the Spinoff Parents editing job, and I write content and stuff in the evenings. So
you touched on that, because it's really a misconception that if you have a book that you're rich.
yeah.
So I just want, if you don't mind, Emily, elaborating a little bit on that, because people do assume that you're an overnight millionaire.
It's
if you
so
become
funny
an author.
when they said Penguin approached me, and I thought that it was my friends playing a joke on me, because the Writers' Festival had been the week before, and my friend Chris, who had a book there, said to me, "Oh, that's going to be you signing next year on that table," and I was like, "Fuck you!" Like that's really rude. And I thought he was calling to do a joke on me and stuff, but she was like, "Penguin," and I was like, "Is it another penguin or like the actual penguin?" And she was like, "I don't understand what you're saying," and I was like. I was like, is it budget penguin? But so when they said we want to do a book, and and I rang my husband and I was like, we've made it, I can quit my job. And then I was like, with the contract, I was like, there's a mistake, because it says I get like $1 a book, but like books are like $35. And they're like, no, that's not a mistake. And I was like, oh, okay.
There goes early retirement.
So, but yeah, I feel like it's not something you can complain about, because like you've got a book. And I didn't do it for the money, obviously, because if it was for the money, I wouldn't have done it. But I did it for the fact that I hoped it would be a friend in the night to another mum, because around that time that I got the book deal, I had pretty bad postnatal depression, and was really, really struggling to find the joy in parenting, and I wanted to find it, and I did, and I wrote about that journey of looking for joy and having some days where you just feel like there's nothing left, like the tank is empty. And I reread the book after I'd come out the other side of it, and I thought, yeah, I hope this book serves mothers and fathers well, that they read it and do feel like it's a friend in the night, and it does give them comfort, and it does make them feel like they're not bad parents like I thought I was. So yeah, it's a labour of love. I don't mind that it doesn't. I do mind. No. Buy my book. No.
Well, I think with my experience with reading your book, Emily, and I made this comment to Emily earlier, it's very well balanced for me. And although my children are older, it took me back to that time where I felt that I was completely abnormal, and I guess I didn't have anywhere to express it. So putting myself in the situation of a mum today, and especially somebody who's suffering from postnatal depression, this would be a really good pick-me-up. And I say that lightly, because postnatal depression, as a lot of us know, is nothing to scoff about, really. But it would give them faith and hope that they are not in this class of their own. So, and Emily touched a little bit before on her son, Eddie, who suffered a lot of illness. So, and I know there's probably people in the room too who have had to suffer with children who have illnesses, and it's totally unexpected, because you think it's never going to happen to me. And honestly, we all think that. And so it hits us, it bowls us like a truck when it does happen. So I'm just going to ask Emily, and with all respect too, as much as she wants to share with us, because we have to keep ourselves private as well. So, and I've told Emily if there's anything that I do ask, if she doesn't feel comfortable with it, then by all means don't answer it. Okay, so Emily, if you'd like to share a little bit of the ups and downs of discovering that you had a child that was sick and unexpectedly.
So I actually, the very last thing I wrote in the book was Edies' story, and I actually called it Edies' story in the book. But it was the last thing I wrote because it was the hardest thing to write, and revisiting that was very painful. And the reason why I wrote about it was I wanted to, I think in the book I might go to the book because when I talk about Edie, it's a bit hard my words get a bit jumbled. I'm better in print and in person. I just swear a lot and jumble my words. So I said about Edie. I'll just maybe read you this little bit about why I decided to. Anyway, my son said to me once, "Tell me the story of when I was sick." And I looked at his little moon face, looking up at me expectantly, and I knew I couldn't just yet. He was snuggled up on me with his little hands tucked into the neck of my jumper, his long legs a little pretzel in my lap. He has a favourite game where he gets a long ribbon or scarf or a pair of my stockings stolen from the clothes horse and ties it to me. I pretend I don't notice him doing it so that I can feign surprise when he turns around and says, "You're mine now, we are attached." He doesn't know that I'm his always. We will always be attached. He doesn't need to trap me. He has my heart always. He did from the first time I heard the little gallops of his heartbeat as he lay on the hard bed in the midwife's office. "I think it's a boy," she said. We knew then too. We knew our little boy because we had been dreaming of him for so long. So I will start his story here, ready for when he's too big to fit in my lap and he wants to hear about the little boy who made it. So I won't. I think, Edie, it's a good thing that Edie's older now, where we can talk to him about how he feels about, my biggest nightmare was turning my kids into characters, I think that's a real problem with mummy blogging as it is essentially just lots of photos of your children, and that's never sat well for me, but I guess I haven't ever had to do that because I'm a writer, not and I sometimes worry that these kids get turned into characters in somebody else's life, and I've tried really hard not to do that with my boys. And we talked to Edie and I talked to my husband a lot about how do you decide whether it's your story or their story, and where does the consent lie when you're writing about your children. And my husband and I talk about it a lot, and we actually talk to Edie a lot about it because he likes sharing his story because he can raise money for the children's hospital by doing that. So for his 4th birthday, he asked that instead of having a birthday party, he would collect for the children's hospital for the day. And because he's like an adorable little unicorn, he raised like $8,000 for the hospital by going up to people and saying, "Can I have some money?" So, "Are you sure? Because I saw some coins." He cleaned out Wellington. But, and then the next year they said, "We would love to have Edie on board again as well." And I said to Edie, "Do you want to be on TV or on the radio doing the hospital ads?" And he was like, "Yeah." And my husband and I were like, do we not? Because we don't post this picture much. And And we were like, well, if he really wants to do it and it's for a good cause, that seems like the right thing to do. And I said, if he walks into the radio booth anyway, I bet they won't get anything useful because this kid is like his mother. He just fucking talks. And so we were sort of like, they probably won't get much. We walked into the radio station and he's got his little big oversized things, and they were like, are you ready, Eddie? And he was like, yep. And he puts on this voice like, oh my God, like, when I was really sick and it was very hard, but my mummy loved me. And I was like, oh my God, he's a pro. He's just going to get everybody whipping out the EFTPOS cards. Like, please give us some money for the hospital. I was like, I love it. So yeah, it was a total. I was telling my husband and he was like, he can totally even say hospital. He's totally like, I'm going to get money this year. So, but yeah, we do, the big whole long thing that I'm getting to is that I was very careful with Eddie's story about, we've never named his illness or gone into details about his illness, but what I've talked about were the feelings that my husband and I had and what it feels like to be in that space, because I think when you're in it, you feel like you're in another planet, particularly when you're actually in isolation and, you're going into the room and you can't leave the room without permission, and, or ICU where there's no windows, and, so I judge every story that I share as, is this going to do something? Is this respectful of my children? And I print off every story and put it in a box as a tangible reminder that my children will someday see this when they're older. So I have to respect them because I don't want to pay for their therapy when I have so many therapy costs. So, yeah, I mean, I do my best to balance it, but I do think writing about that really hard stuff is important, and a bit of the book is about what it's like being on the ward, and I think that's important to talk about because that some of the stuff I get the most feedback from is mums who are really, when you're in the ward and you're sick in there, you can't go to coffee group. And if you go to coffee group, they're all like, bitching about like when their kid's going to start solids and stuff like that. And your child's fed through a tube, and or like going on about drinking so much and gaining weight and everything when your child's still severely underweight to the point of malnourished, and so, yeah. But I thought maybe I could just read one little bit that I wrote actually in the hospital. I could not. I don't want to just do downer stuff, but
No, honestly.
we can go back up.
Yep.
After
We're
I
going
bring you
to.
right down. So, okay. There are some lovely words. I wrote this in the hospital at like 3 a.m. So, if it doesn't... Why am I talking down my book when I want you to buy it? Okay, I won't do that. Okay. There are some lovely words. Youngberry is a word commonly used in Lebanon. It is Arabic and it is difficult to translate. It is the wish that you will die before the one you love. Simply, you bury me. Unsurprisingly, it's a sentiment that lives mostly in the hearts of mothers. I have watched my 2 babies fragile in their hospital beds, fighting for breath too many times now. Each time Youngberry escapes from my lips as I whisper a fervent prayer. It is the same every time. When my babies are at rest, their chests still straining but their eyes closed, I too close my eyes. I picture them at peace and content with loved ones, partners, children, grandchildren, friends, cuddles, kisses, travel, wine, cheese, trampolines, laughter, happy tears, celebrations. I picture them proudly watching recitals, performances, gigs, shows, races, karate, swimming, guitar, maybe ballet. I picture them at graduations, awards, writing CVs, creating art. I picture them with a faceless love by their side who brings them as much joy as their father brings me. And I imagine them saying, "Your Nana used to say," to their grown children in remembrance of me. And even though I'm gone, they're not broken by my absence. They have their own beautiful lives now, and they look at their babies and they whisper, "Youngberry."
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to do here is to build a picture. Do you all feel that you know Emily now? Yeah. Please don't let that deter you from speaking to her afterwards, and honestly, because that's what this is about. So we've heard a little bit about, Emily, and we've heard about her sons as well. So behind this, from my perception, from reading the book, is an incredible man that looks like Tarzan and has the most tolerance in the world. So I want to hear a little bit about Emily's husband, because honestly, if you have read the book, this man is amazing. Guys, he's a lot to live up to. The things that he's put up with. And I'll tell you what, mums that are post-pregnancy, I do remember this, we can be the most venomous cows on earth. And men put up with it. So
You want me to read the day 3 one, don't you?
I think I do. Guys, you will laugh at this and you'll relate.
Yes, my darling husband. There are groups that have come up of Emily Wright's husband, because I don't share pictures of him or say his name, and they call him Mr. B, and they do spottings around Wellington, and he's the most introverted guy you have ever met. Like, he will run into a wall to get away from people, and so he'll be out shopping with the kids and stuff, and they'll be like, "It's Mr. B, it's Mr. B," and he'll be like, "Oh," like, just totally freaks him out. It's great. Okay, so this is what she means by him putting up with shit. This post is called Day 3, which I can hope I've never read this one live. It's short, but hopefully I don't fuck it up. But all right. After the horrific ordeal that was my second labour, my wonderful midwife came over for our first check. She weighed baby and did the usual midwife-type things, and then she said as she left, "Remember, around day 3, you'll suddenly feel very emotional. This is hormonal and it's completely normal. Just be ready for it, and if you start to feel out of control, just take a deep breath." I immediately forgot this advice while staring at my little bundle of perfection who had been born only 8 hours or so earlier. On the morning of day 3, I was feeling very smug. I still had that adrenaline-fueled, happy, thank all of the gods I'm not pregnant anymore, look at my perfect baby rush going on. I was dressed, which I felt was a huge achievement. I was still feeling powerful, but in an I survived a massacre kind of way about my son's birth. And a coffee was all I needed, and my day would be perfect. I turned on my new coffee machine. The little light with the beautiful little outline of the coffee cup didn't turn on. What? I pressed it again, but the little light with the little outline of a coffee cup didn't turn on. I shook the machine. The light, it didn't turn on. I took the thing out of the thing, and it still didn't turn on. I hit the machine. It didn't turn on. Suddenly, I knew with every fibre of my being that this was my husband's fault. He had clearly broken the coffee machine. Never mind that he doesn't drink coffee. That was a minor detail. I bet he fucking broke it and he didn't even fucking fix it. Probably because he doesn't drink coffee. You just can't trust people who don't drink coffee, even if you're married to them. Then, like a deer about to be hit by a truck fueled not by petrol but by pure incandescent rage, my husband walked nonchalantly into the kitchen. "The coffee machine won't work, you need to fix it," I told him. "Can you just have a coffee at my mum's?" he said in a perfectly reasonable tone. "We're already late." "How dare you? How very dare you?" I said to him. "First you get me pregnant and then you deny me coffee. You're a monster." My husband blinked at me. do you think you're overreacting a bit? It's just coffee. Just have one at my mum's. Just coffee? Just coffee? Who even are you? I launched into a 45-minute attack that covered most of his suddenly apparent and numerous failings and the fact that there's only instant coffee at his mum's. Why can't you just fix the machine that you broke so I can have just one thing I need in this world? Clearly, our marriage was in trouble if he couldn't do this one thing that would make me so happy. Suddenly, I was devastated. I'd always thought we had a good marriage. People had commented on how good our marriage was, and now it was all a lie. We would have to get divorced. What kind of impact would that have on Christmas? I don't want to have to drive on Christmas Day. Christmas Day is clearly a day for drinking too much. What if he got a girlfriend? What if he married someone else? What if she was prettier than me? What if my new baby called her mum? He picked up the nappy bag. Are you leaving me? I cried. He stared at me, utterly bewildered. I began to sob. I was clearly a terrible wife. I adored him, and I didn't want to raise our 2 children on my own. I didn't want my kids being raised by some other woman who would probably be far more attractive than me. But he did break the coffee machine. I don't know what's going on here, he said gently. But I think we should go to Mum's and we can buy you a proper coffee on the way there. We cannot afford a proper coffee, I thought. We are so broke. What are we going to do? Now I have no coffee machine. I can't buy coffee and I can't make coffee at home. I'll have to go back to work tomorrow, even though it's Sunday and the office will be closed. And I won't be able to bond with my baby. He'll turn into a serial killer. I'm going to ruin my precious baby's life. I fell to the kitchen floor sobbing. I'm a terrible mother, I wailed. Just leave. Take the kids. They're better off without me. My husband stared at me with a look of confused fear on his face. He walked slowly over to the coffee machine, trying to avoid turning his back on me. He maintained eye contact. His movements were slow and deliberate. He turned the power on at the wall. He pressed the button, and the little light with the little outline of the coffee cup turned on. So
That's one of my favourite chapters in the book.
Yeah, my dear husband. Well, we met when we were 17, and I think that helps. We desperately wanted children and had to decide very quickly about whether we could or not, because a few weeks after I met him, I had surgery on my ovaries, and I was kind of like, oh, well, it's been good getting to know you, because I'd only seen him out the bus window and been like, damn, that guy is hot. So I wasn't like thinking, oh, I'm going to marry him. I was just kind of, so yeah, I was like, good to know you, friend, and I'll see you once I come out of this. And he was like, who's taking you to the hospital? And like, my parents weren't around, so I was like, I'll sort it out. And he took me to the hospital, and then I got sick. I had an infection and was sick at the hospital for a couple of weeks, and then he brought me home to his mum's house, and was like, my mum's a nurse, she's going to look after you. And now that it's like 15, 16 years later or whatever, his mum is like, yeah, I just opened the door and you were there. Like, it was just a classic, like, 17-year-old boy to just not even tell his mum that, A, he has a girlfriend, but she's moving in that day. So, yeah, so it was a great start to a relationship because I couldn't shower or shit, and he had to do everything with me. And then when I finally pooped, everybody cheered, and I was like, this is so weird. We haven't continued that tradition. We left that. But yeah, so we became serious quickly and moved in together about a month after my recovery, and they said, you will struggle to have children, and we were both like, oh, we really want children. So it took about 4 years to get pregnant with Edie. But I put his goodness down to the fact that he was raised by his mum and a lot of formidable aunties. So, yeah, all the aunties kind of like, when I met him, were all like, oh, yeah, what are your interests in our little boy? I was like, yikes. But yeah, they're a wonderful family that really believes in the parenting that we have, that is kind of trying to be understanding of children and gentle with them and treating them like they're little human beings. And because my husband was raised by women, he cooks dinner every night. Soz about it. I feel so bad saying that, but yeah, he's great. He cooks every night, and he's really struggled with a serious injury and early onset arthritis, and is like his how committed he is to being a good dad and husband is really inspiring to me. It makes me occasionally attempt to be a good wife.
That's great.
So he's great.
I've got a couple more questions for you, Emily, because I'm worried that we're coming towards the end of the time, and I want to leave some time. And I did tell you at the beginning to put your hand up and ask questions throughout, but it looks like you've chosen to stick to the rules. So we're going to allocate a little bit of time at the end. I think an important question to ask for the audience too is, well, Emily's take on the importance of ethical blogging. Okay, because it's something that a lot of us don't consider, but we're out there in a public arena, public platform, so there are certain rules that are important to adhere to, and things that you can create yourself too. Where in Emily's case, obviously it would have been a discussion with her husband and with her family and her extended family as well. So I just want her to talk a little bit about that and the importance of that for her.
Yeah, I mean, when I started, because it was kind of completely accidental, I immediately had, because it was my first post that went viral, or whatever you want to call it, I then had a lot of people approaching me saying, we want to hire you. I had a lot of corporates and big money being thrown at me around, will you do this and will you say this and everything like that. And also I was just incredibly lucky that when I wrote it, I had this moment where I was like, should I put my name? And I didn't. And that was the best choice that I ever did, was protecting the anonymity of my family by not using my name. And my name is Emily, but Wrights. You will never guess it, but it's not my last name. I do get a lot of people being like, what a coincidence. And I'm like, So, yeah, like at the beginning, I think I went by the nickname Boganette because I'm like a real bogan, and my husband teases me that I'm a boganette. And so that was funny because lots of US people are like, what is a bogan? And in Australia, bogan is a bad thing, but in New Zealand it's not. So anyway, I was like, if I'm going to do this, what safeguards can I put around it? And one was not using my name. And I have been doing this for about 2.5 years, and I've made a lot of mistakes, and I wish that at the beginning I had somebody say to me, this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't, Like at the beginning there's a lot of pressure to post photos of your children, and you're like, oh, my children are beautiful, I want to share pictures of them. But I really quickly realised not to do that, because your children become to other people something that they're not. It's kind of hard to explain. And also a lot of the time now when you see a cute child on a mummy blog or something like that, and they're wearing a certain type of nappies and all that, it's because the blogger's been paid and given a year's worth of nappies for the child to wear nappies. I get offered constantly, we'll give you a year's free nappy if you post pictures of your child in their nappy. I got offered thousands and thousands of dollars by weight loss companies that are always keen to get me to lose weight, and which is rude. But they're really keen to get me to say to new mums, start getting your baby body back. And I'm totally against that. And it's hard because I talked to my husband about it, and he's like, are you fucking kidding me? Take that money. And I'm like, no, honey, we have morals. You don't, but we do. But it's hard because you get offered all this stuff. And at the beginning, I did a few things like reviews of things because I was like, oh, Eddie could have this toy. Or, and one toy place offered us a toy to film Eddie playing with it and stuff, which is quite a standard thing, and he was about 3. And I thought, and it was a really cool toy. I feel like I need to say that it was a very cool toy. It was an ice cream truck thing, like this high ice cream shop. And he really wanted it and I really wanted it in that way that when you see a cool toy and you're like, you want this? And the kids are like, You're like, yes, you do. And I thought in my head, I was like, and then I can give it to the kindy, and it's such a, it's a $500 toy. But anyway, I filmed Eddie talking about the toy and it was really cute. And I did the video and all this. And they responded being like, oh, could you also just get him to say, though, that it's only on offer for a limited time? And I was like, no, he's a child. And they were like, could we give you a bit more of a script? And I was like, no, he's a baby. Like, are you kidding me? And it was this weird thing of like, I suddenly went, oh, I'm using my child without their consent to sell things that people don't need. And it just went, oh, I've made a bad choice here, And after that, I started to really go, actually, I have to be paid and I have to work out a way to be paid for my work rather than using my children to sell stuff and also selling stuff to parents that they don't need. Like, I've been offered so much money to say that my kids sleep through the night because of X thing, even though they don't, because they're like, we will give you more money and more money and more money, until you say, and like I could do it, but I don't. And I think that's what worries me. This blogging is actually really unethical in my view, and I think we need to get back to an ethical type of blogging, particularly when it comes to mummy blogging, because they're commodifying motherhood when they're doing things like saying, oh, it's all hard, but we're here in this together, or, oh, mama, I know it's hard, but you're a good mum, and then there's a fucking tagline and it's Kmart. Like, that's commodifying the feelings of mothers, and it's, they can say inherently that it's a positive message, but it's for... it drives me nuts, all these, I don't know if you're online a lot, but if you see all the Kmart mum memes, have you ever wondered why every second picture is like, mums love Kmart, and, all these, and it's because Kmart pays mummy bloggers and they don't pay them in cash so they don't have to declare it. Instead, they take them on overseas trips or offer them thousands of dollars worth of Kmart product so that when you say to them, were you paid for this? They say no. So... Have you blogged about exactly that topic yet? No, because I'm a wimp. halfway through talking about this, I was like, oh shit, the podcast. And I was gonna be like, Cindy, warn me if I go. I mean, it's... Thank you. I mean, yeah, it is. But the problem is that I don't want to be... I don't want to be seen to attack other mums who are bloggers, and also I don't want to attack a lot of them because some of these mums are just, they're hustling, they're doing their thing.
But I mean, who are you attacking if you're just sharing your story? I've been approached, this and that. That's all you're doing.
Yeah.
It's being transparent and honest, which
Yeah.
is wise.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have written a few times about why I don't do sponsored posts and have written saying what my connection is with Flick Electric because I have a sponsor. That money that Flick Electric gives allows me to run the Spinoff Parents. So all of that money goes towards me paying writers so that it's not the Emily show all the time because that cult of personality around mummy blogging is really gross as well. Edit that. But, I do need to write it. I think but I just need to do it in a way that it's a small community. And even though I'm never at Mummy Blogger events because they don't invite me. Yeah, maybe I should just fucking scorched earth it because I never, I never get invited anywhere anyway. Fuck those bitches. No, I'm joking. No, ethical blogging, which is what I was, and I would like to see things like when we have discussions about lunchboxes, and we have these lunchbox. Look at my great lunchbox. I get asked a lot we'll give you a lunchbox and can you show what you give your kids for lunch? And I said, no, I'll post a lunchbox of a school that in a low decile area from a mother who has 2 more days of not having any money until she gets paid again. Because to me, it's disgusting in a country where there is so much poverty that we have people going, oh, but what about my, banana that I turned into a fucking helicopter? Like it's great, but it sits right next to children who have nothing in their lunchboxes, and we have to have programs to get lunches to kids. And if bloggers, when these huge companies come to them and say, we'll give you $500 and a lunchbox to write about our lunchbox, if they say, okay, but you've got to give $1,000 to Kids Can and you've got to give 500 lunchboxes to Kids Can, and then I'll do it. Imagine if every blogger did that, every blogger who gets sent stuff said, thanks for this, I'm going to send it to Women's Refuge and I want you to make a donation as well. Bloggers with big followers, big follow accounts have a lot of ability to spark real change. One of the best things about my position, and I'm the lowest level in terms of follower count because I piss everybody off and they leave because I talk about politics and all the things you're not meant to talk about. But I've been able to, I'm really lucky because I can do fundraisers all the time. I do fundraisers maybe once a month or once every 2 months and get $2,000 every time, just like that, because sponsors want to work with me, and I say only if it's for charity and only if you donate this first. Like Flick Electric gave free power for all of winter to Te Puia Marae as part of an agreement with me, and it's like that. That's what I mean about ethical blogging. That there are things you can do when you have power and privilege with a platform, and feathering your own nest is one thing you can do. But I am lucky in that I don't have to push sponsored stuff to make an income. I can do events like this, but I still think having a day job, which I do have, is the right thing to do rather than trying to make money off blogging in a way that's not ethical.
That's great. I'm just going to open up the floor in case there's any questions that anybody wants to ask before I thank Emily and obviously Paige and Blackmore's. I think we've had a really great session here. I've laughed and I've cried, I've done all those things. But I tell you what, this book is amazing, and it's the first and only book where I have laughed out loud, and my teenage boys have come into the room and said, what's going on, Mum? And I said, oh, it's the book, and then they look at me like, oh, whatever. Teenagers today can't appreciate a good book, or mine don't anyhow, but I'm telling you, if you want to laugh out loud and you haven't got this book already, you need to purchase it, and especially guys, honestly. It is a laugh. You'll see the humorous side of it too. It was inspiring, and I want to thank Emily for being actually totally transparent here and in her book, which is a hard thing for a lot of us to do because they're out there in the public arena and we have these perceptions that we're the only person like this. So you're stepping out and taking a big chance. So I guess does anybody have any questions? Oh, great.
I just wondered, who else do you discuss, apart from your husband, who else do you discuss how you're going to blog in terms of the ethics? Do you discuss it with friends? Is it something you've done professionally?
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was just me. And I actually didn't tell my husband for a little while because I was so overwhelmed by it all that, and then I said to my husband, I've been writing some stuff online, and he was like, oh, cool. And I was like, but people are reading it. And he was like, really? And I was like, don't act so surprised. And so I said, would you like to read it? And he was like, no. So I've always, right from the beginning, I had an approach that I would be respectful of my husband just because he's my husband. And I just, if I'm having a wine with my girlfriends, I might, say, oh, he's driving me round the bend or something like that. But I would never do it on the internet or in a forum. I would never do it in a way that... My approach has always been, if I saw him on Facebook saying, oh, Emily's such a useless cow, she never does the dishwasher properly, I'd be gutted. I'd be so gutted by that. It'd be accurate, but I'd be gutted, and I think some of these, beat down on the husband thing, it's not actually healthy for a relationship to really fixate on it. We're all annoying. Like, I sometimes see those posts and I'm like, bitch, you are not easy to live with either, so it's like my approach has always been, I will never hurt my husband or write anything that I've always treated my writing as if he might read it. And if he did, I would want him to feel proud of what I'd written. And that's the same with my children. When I wrote the book, I gave it to him and said, can you please read this? And he said no. And I said, you have to read it because it's becoming an actual book. And I had to buy him a bottle of bourbon to read it. And then he fucking lied and said he'd read it when he didn't. And I know this because later on we had to do this Sunday TV interview, and oh my gosh, it was the funniest thing. My husband is such an introvert, and he was like, they arrived and he was like, oh, if it's okay, I won't be on camera. And they were like, what? And so I was like, honey, you have to be on camera. And he was like, I don't want to be on camera. And I said, we talked about this. And he was like, I thought we were agreeing that you could be on camera. And I was like, the fuck, just sort it out. And so they said, we'll just do a short interview with you, Alex. We'll show you how to, and they had the camera and he looked like an Iraq hostage or something. He was like, those videos when they've got hostages in war zones? And he was like, they read out this whole bit from the book and they said, how do you feel when you hear those words from your wife about you as her husband? Because I've got some nice stuff in there about him. And he goes, good. And do you want to expand on that? No, thank you. And they were like, okay, well, how about we get the other camera? It's a bit smaller. We'll see if you feel more comfortable with that. So they come out with this big one on their shoulder, and he kept going like this. And they were like, you're leaning again. Could you just stay in the same place? And he's like... So they couldn't use any of it because he was like, finally they went a bit hard-nosed on him and were like, are you not proud of what your wife's done? And he was like, I'm very proud of my wife. So yeah, they never even used the footage. So because it was that bad, they said, do you want to change your T-shirt? And he was like, it was an Iron Maiden T-shirt with the fingers. And he was like, this is my favourite T-shirt. It's like, this is my best Iron Maiden T-shirt. But yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, that's when I found out he hadn't actually read the book. And I said to him, I can't believe you didn't read the book and you allowed it to be published. And he was like, well, I trust you. I trust that you would never write something to hurt me. And that's been our approach, that where there's trust, he's not... I say he's not entertainment for other people, but clearly he is, because, he's gold. But not online. We'll just pretend. He won't listen to this podcast. So, no, we, but other than my husband, I don't talk to anybody about my blog posts. At the beginning, I was doing them on my own, and it's a funny thing because I find it quite hard now writing for the Spinoff Parents because I've had a post that went really the wrong way, and that was because I had nobody looking. Actually lots of people looked at it and they were like, no, this is fine, and it was not fine. And sometimes I worry about that, not having another person to look at my stuff. It's because I'm an editor at Parents, I look at other people's and I'm like, oh, this could be read the wrong way, or, and I don't have that, which is a shame. But yeah, I don't have any other family outside of my husband and his family. Sometimes I send stuff to my sister, but that's about it.
Well, folks, we're going to round off now. So
I feel bad. Did you have a question?
Sorry, there was one more question.
Yeah, okay.
Great. And that was my intention, so that you get to spend some time with Emily as well, and do ask her all those questions. But as I said, just to reiterate, if you haven't got this book, it is well worth buying. It'll be a great Christmas present as well. And before I thank Emily, I want to acknowledge Paige and Blackmore for without them, this wouldn't be possible. So thank you very much. To all the people behind the scenes, and forgive me, I cannot remember everybody's names, but everybody behind the scenes, and also the Nelson City Council for allowing us to use this venue. And to you, of course, without an audience, Emily and I would just probably sit here and have a bit of banter, but it makes a huge difference having an audience, and you've all been really well engaged. And finally, but not least, kanuhi te mihi aroha ki a koe, Emily. Thank you very much for being here today. So Emily's flown away from her family, come down here to do this specifically. It's a break for her. Trust me, read the book, you'll understand. We're giving her time out. So the biggest thank you is to you, Emily, and I know, it's a huge thing to sit here in front of an audience. You wouldn't believe that Emily and I haven't done this before, but we knew we were going to make it work, and you've been a great audience, so thank you all, and thank you to Emily.
Ngā mihi nui.